With most any drug, you can find benefits, but are those benefits worth the harm they create? Piggybacking off cell phone addiction, social media has become the world's drug of choice. And like many drugs, we need to question if the benefits truly justify the catastrophe left behind. Welcome to the garden. I wanted to get into the whole social media thing again. We've talked about it in the past, but I really wanted to kind of dig a little deeper into this and some of the harms that it creates because of a situation that happened recently. I need to kind of protect the names involved, so I don't have all the details to the story, just so you know. And what I'm about to tell you, I'm confident most of it happened like it happened, but regardless, it's a pretty disturbing story. So just an FYI. Mm-hmm. So essentially, I know this person that recently came forward because she had somebody very close to her do some things to her when she was very young. She was around 13 years old. Mm-hmm. And she's in her early 20s now. And so she's starting to suffer some of the consequences of what happened to her back then. That typically happens with a lot of post-traumatic stress type situations. It'll hit them in their 20s, sometimes in their 50s. But in this particular situation, she had somebody really close to her take advantage of her when she was a young teenager. This person was getting girls drunk, drugging them, and then he would film them doing sexual acts or filming them in nude positions. And he was doing this in order to sell it off as child porn. Mm-hmm. A lot of the girls that were involved don't have strong memories of what was going on because like he was grooming them and he prepped them in a certain way in order to do this stuff. So anyways, this person's in her 20s now, and some of her memories came back, and thankfully the person that was involved is actually in jail and will be for a long time.
That's good.
But this girl is having some difficulty. She's going through some of the psychological issues. Typically when somebody has a lot of trauma that happens to them at a certain age, it's almost like they get stuck at that age. Mm-hmm. They start to exhibit some of the same behaviors that as a person would at that certain age. And this person came over to a relative's house and was very angry at that person. Actually blames that person for some of the situations that happened. Whether that's right or wrong, I have no opinion about that. Mm-hmm. But this young girl who's suffering went on social media and started blasting the other person. Not the person that committed the crime, but the relative that she blamed for this situation happening. And it got me thinking about how we are actually utilizing social media today. So when she was talking about the situation on social media, she put out some information about this other person. When she was at that person's house, she started going after this person's husband and creating, drama in their lives, trying to create separation in their lives by going after the husband. Mm-hmm. Well, the person that this was happening to was so frustrated, she grabbed the young girl by the hair and was about ready to, let go, and meaning violently, deal with it. And this happened to happen in front of the young girl's children. And so the young girl decided to take it back to the internet, and she posted the situation of what happened, but she left out a lot of the drama that she was creating behind. Mm-hmm. And when she was questioned about that drama, she started deleting people out of her life off of social media. And this tends to happen a lot in the world that I've seen ever since Trump got into office in 2016. It seems like people get into arguments on social media, and as soon as they get into these arguments, they don't like to argue. Nobody likes that ill feeling. Well, I can't say nobody because
some people love it.
Some people love it.
That's why I'm in this room right now, is to argue.
Exactly. So they tend to delete people out of their lives that have a difference of opinion. And so we're creating these crazy, crazy echo chambers in our lives, and we don't know how to get out of them. And so it's creating this like interpretation of what the world is and what the world's all about. I saw it the other day when I was listening to Stephen Colbert. He had Wanda Sykes on his show. Mm-hmm. And Wanda Sykes was talking, and she was upset about the Roe versus Wade. And she said, I thought this country was about majority rules. And obviously that's not how it works anymore. We're being controlled by our Supreme Court. That was her whole issue.
Right.
And so in her world, she's seeing that the Roe versus Wade is a majority people, even though, the Supreme Court is not a majority rule.
They don't base it off of majority.
Exactly. I mean, they interpret laws and
right.
So even though that's the case in her world, she sees a strong majority of people that are against overturning Roe versus Wade.
Yeah.
And so in her world, she thinks that that's how it should be because that's how the world sees it. And I think we're having a lot of this go on throughout life, period. Like everything that's going on, people are in these little echo chambers everywhere. And if people have an opinion outside of theirs, they're outsiders.
Yeah.
We're learning how not to talk to each other. And that is detrimental to our society right now as a whole. Like it's destroying our society. Sure. So, you had brought up some statistics a while back because we were talking about this.
Yeah. As far as overturning Roe versus Wade?
Yes.
Yeah. And so talking about the majority rule, it is a majority that believes that it should be legal to have an abortion all or most of the time. It was, and I wish I'd looked it up before I came over, but 60% believe that it should be legal all or in most cases. And 39% believe it should be illegal in all or most cases. When you break that down by religion, it's something like 30 to 35% of the people are in the U.S. are evangelical Christians, and like 75% of them believes that it should be illegal in all or most cases. But then you break it down, and that's just evangelicals, right? They make up, again, not a large majority. They make up a minority of the people in the U.S. Buddhists, I think it was 8% think it should be illegal. Even Catholics, and this is Catholic in their religion, in their doctrine, they believe it should be illegal. But 48% of Catholics believe that this should be legal in all or most cases, and only 47% believe that it should be illegal. So it's like, it's not split. That one is split right down the middle, basically. But for the most part, yeah, majority rule would say that it should be legal. But the problem is the Supreme Court doesn't base it off of majority rule. They base it off of their interpretations of the Constitution. And when you get 6 conservative, super ultra conservative, religious Supreme Court justices, they're going to base it on their religious ideologies rather than, in my opinion, rather than just the constitutionality of it.
So I did happen to pull up some of the poll numbers for you.
Oh, good.
So I've got a bunch of different types of polls that are really interesting, and they're kind of off of what you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And as far as majority goes, this is interesting. In June, the New York Post actually did a survey, and this wasn't about abortion. This was about overturning Roe versus Wade, which is, I mean, they're intertwined, but they're different, right?
Sure.
So the survey showed that 50% of the people did not agree with the overturning Roe versus Wade. Mm-hmm. So that's 50%, mm-hmm. half of the people. 22% were undecided.
Okay.
And then 38% agreed with overturning Roe versus Wade. And so social media becomes an issue when we start like delving into some of these groups, right? So obviously if you didn't agree with Roe versus Wade and everybody around you is saying, I don't agree with Roe versus Wade, we don't pay attention to the other 50% that are out there, right? And even though the other 50% don't necessarily agree with overturning Roe versus Wade, there's still a population of people out there that are not necessarily in your group. Sure. And this is where social media becomes an issue. So now, vice versa, 38% of people agree with overturning Roe versus Wade. Mm-hmm. And we are so into our social media in a way that if I was totally in agreement with overturning Roe versus Wade, and because of the people I hang out with. I go to church. I'm surrounded by Christians, and I'm surrounded by people that would agree with this. If somebody was against Roe versus Wade, like this whole Wanda Sykes thing, it creates confusion with me. I'm like, what is she talking about? A majority of people,
right? Because your majority is the conservative evangelicals,
completely different,
right?
So, with that being said, we have these polls. We have to look at other factors that identify with these polls, like you were talking about: Christians, non-Christians, Buddhism. Whatever other alternative facts go into this, and other subgroups of what is going on. And so I found a couple other interesting things. So, back in May, there was a Rasmussen poll that was done, and this was a month ago. 48% of the population approved of reversing Roe versus Wade, and 45% of the people polled disapproved of Roe versus Wade. So that was a Rasmussen poll, and it was done on 1,000 people. The original poll that I gave you was done on just over 1,000 people. So they're very similar polls with completely different outcomes, right? The breakdown of the Rasmussen poll was a plus or minus 3%, and 95% confidence. And as you would expect, 66% of the people that supported the reversal of Roe versus Wade were Republican, 33% were Democrat, and 40% were actually unaffiliated. It was actually 48% were unaffiliated.
Okay.
So I dug a little deeper, trying to understand a little bit more about these polls, and I came across the Quinnipiac poll by CNN. And this was probably the most stunning poll that I saw. It said that 87% of people support abortion when a woman's life is in danger. 84% of people support abortion with rape or incest are involved, and 74% agree if a child has a life-threatening condition or potential illness related to being born that actually decreases the quality of life for that child. After that, it drops all the way down to about 19% of people approve of abortion outside of those three factors.
Okay.
So it makes me wonder how much confusion is actually out there with regard to these polls and abortion. Because personally, if you ask me if I was for abortion, I'm not for abortion, right? Except in those three situations, I can see a reason for it.
Yeah.
Right? No woman should have her life in danger if she has a child, right? I mean, now you're choosing who gets to survive. And in a situation like that, sometimes neither survive.
Right.
So if you can save one at the expense of the other, absolutely you have to, right? Rape, incest, that makes up less than 1% of all abortions. But that is a piece that is pushed out there so hard in order to get support for abortion.
Sure.
So I have a lot of mixed emotions about that.
Right. So like I've got a relative who is developmentally disabled, physically and mentally, emotionally. She's not ever going to be in a position where she could raise a child. She is, though, in a position where she's of the age where she's starting to kind of discover her body, and she knows that has some power with some people, and namely boys. And I worry that she'll be in a position at some point when the family will have to make a decision with her on whether or not she should keep a baby, because everything is in place for that to happen. But there's no way she can't take care of herself. She's not going to be able to take care of a baby. So just that one person in my life is enough to make me say, okay, sure. And
there's situations.
Right. Her situation is, if a person who is not disabled, if a person were to impregnate her who was not disabled, that would be rape.
Yes.
Right. She cannot consent. It would be rape. So would she be forced to carry the baby in a place like Georgia, where there is they don't make a reasonable accommodation for rape or incest?
Well, I think you'd answered your question.
She's just going to have the baby.
Exactly.
Who's going to take care of the baby? What kind of Republican plans are in place to take care of a mother in her situation? What kind of, right? Because it's Republicans who are shooting this down and who are in support of ending Roe versus Wade.
Well, 66% of them.
Sure.
33% of Democrats.
Sure. So what is that 66% doing? I mean, you see people holding up the adoption signs, adoption over abortion. And you ask those people, oh, how many kids have you adopted? 0. How many kids have you adopted? 0, right? It's hypocritical to expect some girl in Washington State to force her to make a baby just because you don't want that to happen and you're in Texas or you're in Georgia. And I know that this is like a states' right issue, right? It's not like that's where we are now, but I can't remember the guy's name. He's a Republican, I think a congressman, and he said that they're going to eliminate the filibuster. They're going to outlaw abortion in the U.S. when the Republicans take office, which looks like it's going to happen this year. And then in 2024, they're going to have the executive. They're already telling us that they're going to end abortion, right? So this person in Washington, D.C. is making a decision about my relative in Washington State as to whether or not she must have a baby.
But hold on a second. So from what I understand, Roe versus Wade was overturned. The federal government stepped out. So if a Democrat or a Republican in the federal government tries to create a law to outlaw abortion throughout the United States, that is also unconstitutional and cannot happen.
False.
It has to pass through the House and Senate, of course, and then the president has a right to veto that. So it's not going to happen.
No.
But it could.
It is going to happen, in my opinion. So
no way.
We're in primary season right now.
Sure.
We can see people like Herschel Walker being propped it up. We've got people like
Dr. Oz.
Dr. Oz, who was a liberal until he wasn't, just so he could run as Pennsylvania for Senate, but whatever. When the Republicans take over the House and the Senate, and they will, and then when the Republican, because Joe Biden is worthless, there's going to be a Republican president next. They're going to have all three branches and the Supreme Court. They're going to push through abortion. They're going to make abortion illegal countrywide. They're going to overturn gay marriage. That will be illegal. They're talking about overturning sodomy laws right now, right? All you have to do is go down the marriage registry and see who's a same-sex couple, and you can arrest them for sodomy. People have been arrested for that in the past before. I forget when it was overturned or when it was allowed by the Supreme Court, but they're going to do these things.
See, I disagree. I don't think they're going to. I think these are extreme talking views to try to pull
Clarence
people
Thomas
on.
I understand. In his decision. He's
one person out of 9.
He's one of the most powerful people in our country right now, and he's got 5 other people on his side on the Supreme Court.
He is, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to agree with a lot of those type of things. Yeah, he can have that as an agenda. And you have people on the other side that have agendas as well. They're going to do certain things on the other side for sure. And this is going to be a battle that goes back and forth until, somebody passes away on the Supreme Court. And then, the power shifts back to a mostly Democratic judicial system.
That's going to happen 30, 40 years.
It could.
It's going to be a long time.
Absolutely, it could. But I don't think those things are going to happen. I think those are extreme views. And like I said, when you start talking about federal laws going into place, these justices basically stepped out and said, this isn't a federal law situation. We're not going to allow it.
The only thing preventing this from being codified into law right now is the filibuster.
Sure.
And because the House and the Senate and the executive branch are all Democratic run.
It would be very stupid for them to get rid of the filibuster because as the polls are showing right now, and if they're consistent this way,
the Republicans are going to take over. There's not going to be a filibuster in place.
No filibuster.
They're talking about getting rid of the filibuster for just this one vote.
Yes.
Right. I think they should have to move to a standing talking filibuster anyway. They have to stand up and they have to speak on topic if they want to have this filibuster in place. The way it is, they just decide not to vote, right? They're talking about getting rid of the filibuster just for this one thing, for codifying But there's no support from Biden or Harris.
Well, I don't think it's possible to get rid of the filibuster for a single vote.
That's what Biden was saying.
Yeah, Biden's half asleep. That guy, he can barely walk.
He's been around in this job for a long time.
Totally understand.
He
but
knows,
if you get rid of the filibuster for one vote, it doesn't matter how important that vote is.
And I understand that you're putting it at risk for anything. But the Republicans are already saying, the Republicans know how to wield power.
Sure they do.
They're already saying, we're going to get rid of the filibuster. We're going to make abortion illegal nationwide. Mm-hmm. They've said that. They're saying that. And Clarence Thomas agrees with that.
But they've turned it over to the states. Even Clarence Thomas turned it over to the states.
For now, right. Because that's all they could do so far.
And that's all they're going to be able to do. The federal government has stepped out of this whole situation.
They haven't. They've put it on the back burner until the Republicans take power.
See, I don't see that being the issue at all. I don't see that being even a possibility because of the way that they ruled now and turning it over to the states. Any federal law that comes into play for this, the way they ruled, they're basically saying that the federal government has no bearing in being able to create rules for states as far as abortion goes.
What were they supposed to decide on that brought this whole thing up?
Yeah, it was the fetal heartbeat law.
Yeah. So
but that allowed them to go into the Roe v. Wade because they couldn't have the Mississippi law and the Roe v. Wade. And so they had to overturn Roe v. Wade to make the Mississippi law legal.
Even though during their confirmation hearings, they said that they were not going to do this.
They kind of sidestepped around those questions.
These questions by saying that there's no reason, because the precedent has been in place for 50 years. There's no reason to overturn. We support the history when it comes to Roe versus Wade.
Yes.
And then they went and overturned it.
Yes, because there was no precedent or anything until that Mississippi law came out, and then they had to reevaluate.
I would argue that there were trigger laws that were in place that were going. I mean, this isn't even really an abortion topic, is it?
No, it's about.
This is about how
it's social media, but this is where it goes to. See, I mean, we get so passionate about what we believe in because of things that we read and because things that are presented to us. And you and I have talked so much in the past about how we see articles differently. Headlines are different that are displayed to us. Right. And this is all part of that whole social media AI thing.
Yeah, we have to, when we're doing research for the show, we have to go to DuckDuckGo so we don't get
the Google AI just blasting us with whatever.
Right, with my liberal shit and your conservative shit.
Exactly. So just to get away from that, obviously you don't want to talk about it anymore.
Well, because I mean, we can
beat the dead horse, and
we've got one full podcast on abortion, and then true. I have my own podcast on. I've got 2 episodes on abortion. I'm just done talking about it.
I will bring up a couple quick things, and then we'll leave this whole topic behind. So this is interesting. So I hear a lot of things from the women that are screaming and yelling about this Roe v. Wade being overturned, that it's being decided by these men that they shouldn't have a say. They shouldn't have a say. Well, I found a survey that said that actually 62% of women support abortion, and 56% of men support abortion. So it's not like the men are making decisions. It's the wrong men are up there, according to these women, making the decision.
Well, men in power are making decisions about their bodies.
Well, here's the other interesting thing. There are surveys about income levels. And the more money you make, the higher up you are, the more likely you are to be in support of abortion as well, which is interesting. Well, not really, because also tends to be the highest infidelity rates.
Those people are the most educated, typically.
Maybe, but they're also people that make over $250,000 a year tend to have more affairs. Like 80% of those people have affairs.
Where's the statistics for that? I just don't believe that the wealthy are 80% more likely, or 80% of them are the ones having the affair.
It's if you look at the study, there's tons of studies out there, and during our break, I'll see if I can find something, but I remember a study that said that 25% of all married couples have infidelity in the marriage, and the higher percentage were the higher earners. And the 80% is based on the 80% of people that cheat. So that's kind of how that study went, I believe.
Okay. But there's got to be some kind of Yeah, these can't be true numbers because you're not going to hear Fox News reporting about Tommy down at the trailer park banging Valerie.
Yeah,
like,
you
these
might.
are going to be unreported for the most part.
Those would be unreported.
Right. So any statistics are going to be skewed, I think, based on who's more notable.
That's true.
As far as fidelity.
That's true.
Right.
Absolutely. But it's still an interesting fact. You see it, and you see that the people that are higher income earners are going to probably be more.
So the people who are higher income earners are the ones who said that they wanted abortion to be legal, because these men who are,
they're making more
they're
money.
Lawyers, they're banging
married.
the secretary, and they're saying this woman is getting an abortion.
Yes, because on the other
they don't
side
want to be
of
responsible for
it's not even the responsibility. I think it's the other way around. Oh my gosh, I get caught cheating because this woman's pregnant. My wife's going to leave me. She's taken half my stuff. I think that's more of what it's all about.
Yeah, that's
because with men, that's what you see. Like, I've had a lot of friends go through divorces, and the number one thing that they're concerned about is
child support,
yeah. Spousal support. Yeah. How much am I going to have to pay?
Sure.
So that makes sense to me.
And that's the only reason for a court decision at all when you're going through a divorce.
Absolutely.
That's the only reason to go to court.
Absolutely. So that's a pretty disgusting thing to talk about. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. I think that would be an interesting topic, but
yeah.
So, here was another interesting thing that I found, and this makes sense also. The Lake Research and Emerson College did an actual study on people with children versus people that didn't have children. And the people with children that supported abortion were 36%. The people without children was 54% supported abortion. Mm-hmm. So that was interesting. So when we start looking at polls, there's a lot of factors that go into this.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on if you're talking Pew Research, or what was the other one that Emerson, Lake and Palmer?
This was Emerson College and Lake Research. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there are people that do a lot of study. I mean, they do a lot of polls, and they're mostly like telephone polls. So we don't even know what batch of people they're polling from, if it's from a certain city, a certain area, because there was polls that showed that the people up north were more supportive of abortion than the people down south. The people over back east were more supportive than the people out west. Mm-hmm. Not by much, but I mean, they were trying to break it down. So
what do you think is the determining factor for whether or not what do you think is the determining factor for how those places poll?
I think it has to do with...
Do you think it's income, or do you think it's religion?
I think it goes all the way back.
I think wealthy people are less religious. I think the more educated people are less religious. And so I think you're going to find some of those divides. I don't mean to break everything down in religion, but really,
I think
that's
it's
how
deeper
we
than
inform
that.
That's how we inform our politics.
I think it goes back to exactly what I was telling you about with social media, and I think people surround themselves around people. So you have people in the South that we meet people in the South, we engage with people in the South, and so all of a sudden we start to develop some of the same ideologies about these people in the South, right? Same with the North, same with the West, same with parents, same with non-parents,
and I think that's applicable to small tribes that you see
that we see everywhere.
Right. I think the fact that it's the Bible Belt down in the South has more to do with it than social media. But I know that those people have their opinions reinforced based on who they talk to in social media.
Absolutely.
What they see, right?
Absolutely. And you're right. I mean, religion's going to play a huge role in abortion. I mean, a majority of the people that are religious, they are definitely going to be against abortion. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. 100%. But that goes back to what I was talking about with regard to social media being... I mean, it has its benefits. It's good for sharing information. It's good for meeting people and meeting up with people that you haven't met in dozens of years, staying in contact with people. I mean, there's benefits to social media,
sure,
but it becomes so incredibly dangerous when we start using them for different things like this Roe v. Wade thing going on. The only reason I bring it up again isn't to really get into the abortion conversation. It's to basically show that we've got this tribalism mentality that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And we jump into this whole tribalism, and all of a sudden we jump on board with these people. And if we're not on board with them, we get erased from them. And so now we have to go find another tribe of people that actually agree with us.
That's true too. Yeah.
And so that becomes really, really dangerous when we don't have other voices talking to us and helping us understand that there's different opinions throughout the world. Right?
Sure.
So, we could get into all kinds of things where this has happened, and I mean, I can bring something up right now that I think will get you fired up.
Let's do it.
Okay. So
wait, unless it's Trump.
It is Trump.
Oh my God.
So
disregard.
So the whole thing with the Trump, there's good people on both sides. If you listen to the whole speech that he's talking about,
now, you swore you weren't going to bring this up.
I did, but I think it's important.
You're
because
like a Supreme Court justice
I know.
circumventing the questions.
I stepped sideways. I said I might not bring this up. I said there's no reason to bring it up.
You said I might never bring this up ever.
Ever. There's no reason for it. But you know what? We're going to bring it up.
But you got a stick and you want to poke with it.
Yes. The only reason I want to poke with this stick is because I lost quite a few Facebook friends.
Yeah.
Because I would question people. And it's not that I disagree with them. It's because I want to understand what's going on. And sometimes I see people that I don't feel are getting a fair shake. And so I step in, and I shouldn't necessarily.
Yeah.
So, and with Trump, when he said there's good people on both sides, everybody on the media, CNN and NBC and ABC and New York Times, Washington Post, and all those, they jumped out and said, Trump's supporting the skinheads. But that's not what was being said in his speech. Maybe it would be easy to see that he's trying to not lose his base.
Right. He's trying to appease those people. So they can't say, well, he didn't condemn us. They can't say that because he didn't condemn them. And there has been times when he has, but that was like completely in a separate incident, completely removed from this incident in Charlottesville.
Yes.
Yeah. I just don't even know what else.
It's frustrating to you.
It's frustrating to me because...
But we have our biases.
Because I heard him say that.
Sure, you did.
I heard his entire speech.
I heard the entire speech, and then I heard what was being played all over the media, which was completely different.
Well, of course, the same thing's going on with Joe Biden. When he'll say one thing that's like a classic Joe Biden gaffe, and then Fox News is playing it.
I know they're showing him fall off his bike, but they didn't show him rolling up, with some confidence.
Every 2 minutes, it's the woke left and Biden's... It's like, whatever.
But that's tearing our country apart completely.
Yes.
And why? We have to keep going back to social media. Social media is it's a cancer, and I don't know what we need to do with it. I mean, we have Elon Musk making a play for Twitter right now. I don't know that that's going to be much better, because now we end up with an institution that's going to go the opposite way. We have this bell that's going back and forth, this pendulum.
Yeah.
That's going back and forth.
The thing with Elon Musk, I think the only reason he's making a play at Twitter is because he's got electric cars that he sells, right? The left are the ones buying his electric cars. He wants people on the right to start buying them. So he's catering to the right by talking about voting for a Republican president before he even knows who the Republican president is going to be, or the Republican nominee. He's making a play at Twitter, who banned Trump. So I think he's just trying to impress this conservative group.
See, I think you're giving too much credit. I see Elon Musk got censored for something on Twitter. He has a lot of money, and he's like, oh, really? You're going to shut me up?
No, I think it's because he's tired of selling only to the left and he wants to sell to the right. And the way to do that is to bring Trump back on after he buys Twitter. And so he can say, look what a proponent of free speech I am, that I'm willing to do this for you people.
But why did he switch from the left so hard? There's a reason. Because, I mean, if what you're saying is true, he's going to get people on the right buying his cars, but then the people on the left are going to stop buying his cars.
No, because they're so in love with trying to save the environment, they're still going to be buying electric cars.
Well, that's
He's
true.
got the number one manufacturer of electric cars right now.
But we see cancel culture happening all over the place, and it's god awful, right? I mean, if Harry's Razors, this is the GOP side, right? Harry's Razors made a comment about something that the left was supporting.
By the way, Harry's Razors, we've got 12 listeners, and we're happy to have an endorsement.
That's right. So the Daily Wire actually created their own razor company in order to go after Harry's Razors.
They're creating their own everything. They're taking everything that's been canceled and they're bolstering it up.
That's right. Their own little side of whatever it is.
Their own little Fox News, where they've got because you mentioned the Daily Wire, I've been listening to that pretty much nonstop for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And you hear the same thing you hear in Fox News, where they take the same talking points, the same topics, and they have like 3 or 4 different people all saying the same things.
Where do you think Fox News gets it?
That Fox News, I think Fox News was the pioneer in this field.
I like confused you for a second.
I had to think, what's this dude talking about? How can he not know?
Yeah, no, they do talk about a lot of the same things. And if you go on to some of the podcasts that you're talking about,
Matt Walsh and
no, your other guys. Matt Walsh is funny, dude. I hated that guy so bad because he's so like, I would say borderline narcissist with everything he says,
but it's just a character he's playing.
It's a character, and he's an interesting guy, but
yeah, he's an asshole too.
He really is. He really is.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I love listening to him. But he kind of takes two extremes, though. He's way more extreme than I could ever be. So,
yeah,
but he makes
I'm
me
grateful
laugh
for that.
That I'm not.
That you're not as extreme as Matt Walsh. I would love to sit down and talk with Matt Walsh for a couple of hours. I
think he would struggle in a debate.
I have a lot of. I'm sure he would, because so many of his topics are so illogical. But whatever, that's an aside.
Well, a lot of his things are about asking people questions and not necessarily answering. He has kind of some go-to points, but he's really good about asking questions.
Well, he's got a whole documentary called "What Is a Woman?"
What is a woman?
Because he's asking what is a woman
Exactly,
and he won't accept any of the answers he gets, and he only plays the answers that are weak. And then he makes his position seem stronger.
Sure, but that's media.
Sure,
That's
sure.
what
I don't
media
blame him
does.
for it. He's getting rich.
Sure,
Yeah, good for
all
him.
of them are.
Sure.
So
I'm not a part of the social justice warriors who I'm not offended by different conversations. I'll have a conversation about anything. I do not care. I don't feel like just hearing another point of view is damaging to me. So I know
it's not going to change who you are. You believe what you believe. You're going to look
Right.
up what you're going to look up, and
But I know there are a lot of people, especially with the cancel culture, quote unquote, that they just won't hear opposing viewpoints at all. Anytime there's any resistance to their idea, they do what your experience is. They just
shut down.
Block it.
Yeah. I realize the more I do this show with you, the more we sit down and talk, the more I really am losing any real opinions about pretty much anything. So because I realize everything out there is bullshit.
Yeah,
Everything.
Yeah, both sides.
I mean, it's there to confuse, and I mean, it's there to divide, and we're going through a complete change globally. I don't know why or what it is, but there's something that's and everybody feels it. Everybody does.
Yeah.
No matter what side you're on. I mean, everybody's fearful of it too. They don't know where to go.
We just don't know what we're afraid of right now.
Yeah.
But that's the same exact position I was in 2012 when I was making a transition from conservatism to liberalism, because I was forced through my job as a political correspondent. I was forced to take a look at both sides and report evenly from both positions, or report on both positions.
Yeah, I wouldn't say evenly in both. You have some opinions that kind of push you one side over the other.
But I was conservative, and then I was forced to look at both sides from a non-biased position, and I realized that both sides are saying the same thing. They're just using different language.
They do.
And it's like when I'll save that for the next.
Well, no, I mean
podcast
when we did our thing on sociology, sociology.
Yeah,
we would really put people to sleep with
we
that.
don't. Yeah, we don't know enough about it.
But with socialism, when we were talking about it, we were using the same arguments for capitalism and socialism. The same arguments. They're like the baseline same arguments.
I'm on a group on Facebook called "Conservatives Criticizing Socialism by Using Capitalism," because every argument you can make against socialism right now is a capitalist problem.
Sure.
And that's what we talked about that in a podcast in the past.
And vice versa. Like it really is vice versa, because we talked about it, and we live in such a hybrid system. There's no identity.
Right.
So because of that, every argument you make, like obviously there's going to be problems in any society, but because we're a hybrid system, we can blame it on either side.
True.
And so no matter what's going wrong, we're going to blame it on that side, but that side's going to be blaming the same thing on the opposite side,
right,
because it's a problem that's actually happening.
And
right?
when socialism is a dirty word, it can be a catch-all for anything that's a problem.
Well, capitalism, same thing. Like capitalists are killing small businesses. Well,
True.
Socialism kills small businesses.
False.
Like this is our, this is our thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same exact argument. And so that's kind of where we go. So now trying to bring it all the way back to social media again.
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden I'm hanging out, I'm talking with Tom, Bill, and Madeline and whoever else. And I'm talking to them about how, you're just talking about your group. And so now all of us are kind of grouping up and we're building our own little tribe and mob. And now we're going to try to spread our information out there to where we can convince everybody. And so
Right.
now all of a sudden, you have this other thing going on. It's like the game Go in China, and we're all just kind of grouping together and trying to pull people onto our sides, but we're using the same exact arguments to argue with people.
Yeah.
And if somebody says, no, that's capitalism. Oh, you're deleted. You're not my friend. You think that's capitalism?
Right.
So we're gonna cut them out of our lives, and that's just kind of where we are in this society right now, and it's crazy.
Yeah, and this happens in surprising ways because there were several groups that I was a part of that were pro-trans communities, and I went on and I was making some comments that were pro-trans. I'm totally good with people being trans. It's no problem. But they pick out the smallest errors that I might have made in language that I chose to use, and they totally conflated that and made it seem like I was completely anti-trans and I'm just a self-loathing trans whatever. And like I got blocked from a couple of groups just because I didn't use the appropriate language. And I'm not trying to change so much of my personality that I fit in with 20 somethings on trans rights. Like I believe what I believe. And yeah, you're not singing the exact same song they are. So you're going to be blocked.
So that brings up something interesting. Just with you talking about it made me think about it. It seems like if you don't agree to be able to have somebody that you can disagree with, and you're deleting people out of your life, and people are deleting you out of their life, we're basically making everybody very, very, very lonely in this world.
That's true too.
We're never going to be able to find somebody. Marriages, people that get together tend to be opposites, in marriages. Like a lot of the marriages that work, they tend to have a lot of differences.
Yeah.
Right. If every tree in the forest was the same, it would be a very, very boring world, right?
Right. You got to have a check valve in place.
You do. And so like, I'm very extroverted. My wife is incredibly introverted. She will, like, if we go out in public, she's right there and she'll just sit back and listen to everything that I say. And not me, but the conversations that are going on. I don't want to sound narcissistic.
She's sitting there staring at you with her big doe eyes.
She loves me. That's my wife. No, but it works because I pull out a piece of her that she has a hard time tapping into.
Yeah.
But on the other side, when there's nothing to do and like nothing to do at all, and we have nothing around us, like she could sit down and be in perfect harmony, just sitting out, blowing those little dandelion, whatever you call those things.
Dandelions are good.
Yeah. So, and I have to sit out there next to her and I'm like, oh, okay. So I got to relax. And so she mellows me out. She calms me. She takes me to a place of zen that I never realized. And I'm kind of finding a balance in myself as I get older and older. I get a little more grumpy and a little more opinionated about certain things, but I really feel like I'm finding this place as I get older and older that is comfortable.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to do that if I was with somebody that was exactly like me.
Dude, marriage would be so intolerable if we agreed on every single point.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I could not be in a relationship with someone who agreed with me on everything because there'd be nothing to talk about.
So why do we want this in our friendships?
Right.
Why do we it's crazy.
And you and I don't. That's why we have this podcast. You and I like to be engaged in a way that makes us think and that makes us feel challenged.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why you would want your group to all have the same exact opinions and ideas.
And I'm dumb. I'm dumber than a box of rocks in a lot of situations, and I acknowledge it. There's a lot of things I don't know. So I question people and it pisses people off just because I ask, you should know this.
And the stuff that you don't know, you ask from a point of view, like you are challenging, even if they have the same opinion that you have, you're going to challenge them from like a leftist perspective, just so you can see them formulate their thoughts. So you can kind of take a framework to superimpose over how you're formulating your thoughts. You're trying to learn how to think from another person.
I do that. And I learn who that person is.
And so that can be enraging when that same person agrees with you, but they're like, oh, this is just a leftist cuck. And like, they don't want to hear from you because you're challenging them, when really it's to learn about them. It's not like you're a natural interviewer. It's you want to learn about people and how they think rather than you learn about their ideas.
That's right. No, I mean, that's right on.
So when you're on social media and you get like, you're going to be more lonely than anybody because you're pushing against everybody, no matter what their position is.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up. I actually, I bounce around sometimes and I'll find an article that's worth arguing on a little bit. And I usually pick something that's really controversial. Right. Mm-hmm. And so right now, something that's going on out there that's really controversial is the Deshaun Watson, the football player that was sleeping with the massage therapist that came over. He'd fly him in. He would try to grapple on them and sleep with a bunch of them. Well, they've turned around and they've placed lawsuits on him and they're suing him for sexual harassment, sexual misconduct, and all this stuff. And he was the client. And so the NFL now is getting ready to suspend him. They want more than a year suspension. He's already had a year off and they want to put another 1 year indefinite suspension. I don't even know what the hell that means, right? It's either indefinite or it's not, but they want a 1 year indefinite suspension. And so I went on there and I was like, I don't understand. Like, Deshaun Watson was the customer. These massage therapists, they have a code of ethics that they have to abide by legally. They're not allowed to sleep with their customers. Yet here they are, they're sleeping with customers. They're sleeping with Deshaun, who's their customer, and now they're suing him and getting paid for it. They should all lose their license. They should all have to go through all kinds of other training. Like what they've done is
trainings.
I mean, they were in a position of power and took advantage of that position of power. But here's the power like dynamic, because Deshaun Watson's worth so much money and so much fame. He automatically has more power, so he's the one that's in the wrong, but he's the customer. And so I'm questioning this, and people are just one after another coming after me, and I'm like taking it all on. But one of the things they said is, oh, this is the United States. Women are always to blame. And I'm like, no, that's not the case. They're to blame because they're to blame. They're the ones with the license. They're the ones with the code of ethics. They're the ones with the morals. They're the ones that have to abide by certain standards, not him. I'm totally okay with the women that are suing him that didn't sleep with him, that he was engaging with sexual misconduct and really being pushy and putting them in a very uncomfortable spot.
And that was going to be my point.
Totally different situation. But a lot of these women had consensual sex with him and they're suing. And they're getting paid for it. And it shouldn't be happening. But it's just the world we live in is so crazy. But like you said, on social media now, I'm being banned from all these different people, thumb down at me if they could, I'm sure, but they're just, attacking because of this. And
just because of a difference of opinion.
And I was just questioning it. I don't think what he did was heroic by any means, right?
Yeah, right.
But it's pretty bizarre, the world we live in. But once again, we kind of got off topic with what we were talking about, and we knew it would happen, but we're gonna cut it short today, and you've been listening to The Garden.